And welcome back in, Draft Nicks. We are on the clock here at Draft Nation, where some teams are already heavy into planning for next year. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, if you're a Chiefs fan, if you're a Bills fan, Eagles fan, two of those teams face each other this week. Your teams are not worried about that. They are worried about winning right now. But you're always concerned about what that team's going to look like going forward. Doesn't matter if it's the NFL, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, where a bunch of moves are happening as the hot stove season has really kicked off at the GM's meetings and owners' meetings this week. All of it being covered by everybody at draftnation.com. You want to set up your account right now so that you're on top of absolutely everything. It's totally free to do so right now at draftnation.com. Got my guy JT with me here, ready to talk about the Steelers. JT,
what's up, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good.
It's a busy time of year, extra busy for the Steelers because now we're talking about 3 games in 11 days, man.
That's insanity, man. I don't. A lot of questions for Jim on that one, man. 3 games in 11 days. I don't know how the bodies are going to react to that. So.
Well, I think it's a huge question mark because, and you mentioned it, we bring in our guy from Steel City Insider, Jim Wexell. Jim, this is crazy. A team that really has been playing so well, above expectations, and staying remarkably healthy, I think, for the most part, right? Maybe that's why they've played so far above expectations. All of a sudden is now faced with not only an injury to their top receiver, but 3 games on top of that in 11 days, and they're all against division leaders. This is murderer's row right here, man. Before we dive into what the next 11 days are going to look like for the Steelers, these next 3 games, just your reaction to the fact that this offense continues to produce just enough, the defense continues to come up with big plays, and they're sitting there with a 2-game lead on the Ravens in the division now.
Yeah, this is the deepest Steelers team. I thought coming out, I wrote that. This is the deepest Steelers team we've seen in a while. Not that they've had that many injuries, but, we forget they've had their right side of their offensive line obliterated, and they're on IR, so nobody counts those guys. And, there's not much else except for Pickens. They've been plucky. That depth has shown up on special teams. And so they have great special teams, good defense, average offense, and the offense is getting better. As far as 3 games in 11 days, they have the right coach. We do not care.
Yeah.
And, didn't they go through this in the COVID year?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they had disastrous results, but at least they have
that's the problem, I think. I think everybody remembers that, right? The Ravens game that got pushed back almost, what was it, 5 days, I think it was, and playing at 3:00 on a Wednesday afternoon or whatever it was. Similar this year because Christmas falls on a Wednesday, JT, right? And this is a team that, again, the competition will get more and more stiff as those 11 days progress, and I think people are worried. Is this where it all starts to fall apart?
Yeah.
I mean, Jim, they got the 3 games in 11 days against teams that are 31-8 combined. The main thing though is, if you think about it, we got a 2-game lead on Baltimore. So really, the most important games coming up are Baltimore and Cincy. We take care of them too. The division's ours. I don't think there's really that much of a difference between 2nd seed and 3rd seed anymore because you don't get a bye anyways. So do you think there's a chance that Tomlin knows this and maybe will sit a player down if he's not even close to being 100%, where normally a guy would go, be able to play week to week? So a guy like Pickens, there's no reason to really trot him out there, right?
He's not. If Pickens could play, he'd play him. Tomlin goes 1 week at a time. It's the we do not care mentality, and he's going to look at 1 week at a time. And if he does that, they could possibly get the number 1 seed, right? But realistically, even if they lose this one and Baltimore to 2 away games, 2 toughies, beat Kansas City and beat Cincinnati, I believe they'll have the division because of tiebreakers. But beating Kansas City will help that tiebreaker. I think it's either strength of victory or conference record. I forget. I've looked it over. Because they would be tied with Baltimore. They'd be tied in the head-to-head. I believe they'd be tied in the division. and then go to the next one. I believe is what, strength of opponent or something
I
like
believe
that.
so. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah,
But I think
we
have a
both
chance
lost to
if they beat
Cleveland.
Kansas
So.
City.
Yep.
So I really don't, but I don't think he's looking ahead.
And I think it's, when you start to get into, without getting too deep into the weeds and the tiebreakers and what may happen in the next 4 games, the Ravens schedule, I understand they got the Giants and the Browns to kind of bookend their final 4 weeks, but the Browns are a division game. We've seen them wreak havoc in the division already this year, right? Specifically against the Ravens. And there's Steelers and Texans in between there, in the middle of that sandwich for the Ravens. Yeah. So, and the Texans have had their ups and downs, but again, for the Ravens, that'll be their 3rd game in 11 days on Christmas Day and on the road. So, it's very interesting to me. The team that may capitalize on all of this, Wex, interestingly enough, is one of the few AFC contenders that isn't dealt this sort of scheduling card, the Buffalo Bills, who don't have to worry about the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Steelers. They've all got to worry about this 3 games in 10 or 11 days portion of the schedule that culminates on Christmas Day. The Bills may be primed to be that team that jumps on any opportunities the Chiefs may present as they continue to win with like voodoo and black magic. I don't know how.
Well, that's why I think the Steelers are going to beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day. I don't know that the Chiefs are going to care all that much. They may have everything wrapped up. I've argued with people over the years. I really don't think, especially teams like the Chiefs who've been there so many times, that there's a great motivational force behind number 1 seeds and things of that sort when you have the division so wrapped up. So on Christmas, especially on Christmas Day, when you've got to travel across the country and play it, to them will be 11 a.m. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this game coming up is the fascinating game. It's very, very interesting.
And Jim, something happened a couple of weeks ago with a young player. I was wondering if it's a maturity thing with Broderick Jones. He actually took Pickens during the game when Pickens was starting to implode a couple times. Is Broderick Jones starting to become more, in your opinion, like more mature, just starting to get the job done more? And he just seems like you don't seem like you see as much as him of him missing blocks as much. And the game where he took Pickens aside and he was the guy that was in Pickens' face the whole time. Do you think he's starting to take that next step? It's been slow, but I mean, he's starting to take that next step.
Well, there's a difference between, missing blocks, making blocks, and his maturity. I've written on my website several times that he's very mature and that I thought he would get through this. I like him. He's always been accountable. He's always been in the locker room, the offensive linemen all dressed in the same area. So there's a lot of banter going on, and he's always been a mature guy for how young he is. I think he's still younger than McCormick and Frazier.
He is.
But yeah, he's always been a mature guy. He's always been accountable. He's always answered questions, even when he's had terrible games. So I've hoped for him to begin making blocks, and it looks like he is.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We talk about the growth and the development of young guys. I thought it was interesting in the 2nd episode of Hard Knocks, which is following the 4 AFC North teams, that you saw Mike Tomlin have like a very candid conversation. And I think for anybody that's never been to a practice, to see the way Mike Tomlin communicates with his guys during practice and in the building, it has been a huge eye-opener. Now, Wex, obviously, you've been to practice for years. I've been in the building my fair share of times as well. So I've seen the way that I'm, I'm aware of how Mike Tomlin, a lot of us are, how he communicates with his players and his coaches and his staff. It's been eye-opening to a lot of people who haven't been there before to see it. And to see him pull Joey Porter Jr. aside and have a conversation with him following the Bengals game, but leading up to the 2nd Browns game. And after all those penalties were taken in Cincy and people were jumping all over Joey Porter Jr. for them, to see Mike Tomlin pull him aside and say, hey, I think you're more worried about this stuff than I am. I'm not nearly as worried about this stuff as you think I am, all right? You got to just go out there and be you. That tells you, A, he lets the guys sort of find that maturity on their own, but when they need to be guided into it, as I think Joey does from time to time. Every young player does. Broderick, all of them. Mike Tomlin is right there to just sort of give that. He's not going to push them towards finding it on their own. He's going to just kind of slowly guide them towards finding it.
Yeah, but I mean, every player is different. I mean, look how he blasted Pickens
right?
Two press conferences ago. This guy's got to grow up, and he's got to grow up in a hurry. That to me felt like contract negotiations. You got 5 more games, pal. Or we're going after that goon who was playing on the other team. Yeah, I mean, he knows the personalities, and I've heard the clips. I haven't seen Hard Knocks, and I've seen him for years, and he gives me that. He's texted me back, when things have gone bad for me. He's texted me, and he's been like that. So none of this is a surprise. I like the part. I've heard the clips. I was listening to morning radio today, and I heard the clips about Porter when he told him, Porter said, well, I want to be great. And he said, well, you're going to be great. You're just not going to be great today. Take a step towards being great today. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. That's great stuff.
And Jim, another guy I want to talk about that he's not getting enough, to me, he's not getting enough press or credit in the paper or even with Steeler fans is explain how important Deshaun Elliott's been this year. 96 tackles, an interception, 6 pass defense. He just defended. He just seems to always be in the middle, making tackles, making plays happen. How big of a signing was Deshaun Elliott?
Well, no Steeler team has gone to a Super Bowl without a great, strong safety. I don't know if he's great, but he's better than what they had, and it was a key signing. Yeah, I agree, 100%. Look back at their strong safeties. Mike Wagner, Donnie Shell, Carnell Lake, Troy Polamalu. They don't have a great, strong safety. They don't go to the Super Bowl. You could probably say that about center, running back. Yeah.
Well, I think the interesting part too, Jim, is, when I look, it's a number that jumps out to me every time I see it updated. The number of missed tackles. Steelers are at the top of the league in fewest number of missed tackles this year. The tackling has been better in the secondary. I think JT brings up Deshaun Elliott. It's a great case in point of a guy who you never see him pulling the old, I'm going to dive at a guy from 5 yards away and try to blow him up. I'm going to get to the man. I'm going to cut him off with an angle, and I'm going to get my arms around him and my shoulder into him and wrap him up and take him to the ground. The tackling has been better this year than I remember in maybe a decade. Yeah.
Once the inside linebackers got through their little rough patch at the beginning, absolutely. I was going to praise Elliott for the PBU he had against Njoku. It was a great play, knocked it down, and it preceded a missed field goal. It was at the pylon. It could have been a touchdown. But then at the end of the game, he gave one up to Njoku. So, I mean, you're up, you're down, I'm not trying to diminish what Elliott has done, but absolutely, great pickup. Now, I like what Tomlin said about the Eagles. It was Saquon Barkley was the best pickup. I don't know if that was a shot at Derrick Henry or not, but Saquon Barkley was the best pickup in the NFL, and that's the kind of pickup I'm looking for the Steelers to make next year. Deshaun Elliott, they're plugging holes. That's nice with solid players. Now, next year, they're going to have the money to make a big splash on offense with a skilled player, either wide receiver, running back, or both. So anyway, it's weird that they're kind of following the Eagles' game plan, and of course they have Andy Weidel in, but they're where the Eagles were a couple of years ago with the offensive line. Landon Dickerson, man, who didn't like him coming out of Alabama? I know he had about 5 ACL breaks, but he hasn't had any in the NFL, and he's just kicking royal ass. And Lane Johnson. The Steelers are going to, in a year, maybe in a year, they'll have that offensive line. And then it's time to add that stud running back. And then you don't have to pass on, they passed on Quinyon Mitchell to get Fautano this year. They had the plan is to put the offensive line together, and maybe in a year or two they get that stud corner. The Eagles are a year or two ahead of them, so it seems like the same plan. So that's why this week is so interesting to me.
And Jim, go along with the free agency stuff that you're talking about, and in your mind, are the Steelers gonna sit down with Russell Wilson? Is that their guy? I mean, you hear the rumors that they want Wilson back. You're seeing that in the I got a couple sites that I get on that are pretty legit, and they said that Steelers are looking at Wilson. They want Wilson. Do you think Wilson is he going to hold out? You think for like a 4-year deal for his age, or do you think he's a guy that would take a 2-year deal, 1 or 2 year deal?
My feel is, for one thing, they're not talking. I wouldn't believe any of that stuff. I think it's just so obvious that it's easy to write that. Mm-hmm. It's obvious. I mean, they're going to go after him. He still has some youth to him. I think to answer your question, I think as long as it looks pretty, I think Russ has pride, but I don't think he needs money.
Right.
So, but he has pride. So as long as it looks pretty, if it's a 3-year deal and that 3rd year is, that's when you can part ways. If that 3rd year deal makes the total package look good, I think that's all he would need. I mean, it has to be fair in the first 2 years.
Definitely.
I don't think he really needs the money.
No, well, not with the Broncos paying him so much to go away. You're right. He doesn't.
Remember, Brady used to take less money so that they could win. And now I think if you tell Russ, if we pay you less money and we get you T. Higgins with the money we're saving, and I think Russ would, hey, let's do that. Let's get that Super Bowl.
And a similar situation with, let's be honest, a wife who might make as much, if not more than him, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that feeds into it, definitely.
Exactly.
I want to bring it back to this week's game and the Eagles. This is fascinating to me because the Eagles defense this year, I mean, they turned over what was a struggling defense, especially secondary, in basically one offseason, going out and getting you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. They go out and get Cooper DeJean. Those guys have both been impactful for the Eagles this year. And of course, as Mike Tomlin called him, Mr. Barkley. But the Steelers are one of the best run defenses in the league. They've only given up more than 125 yards on the ground to 2 teams this year, the Giants and the Colts, I believe. So they are built to not shut down Saquon, but certainly slow Saquon down. But this is also the first time they faced an offense with maybe this kind of diversity of weapons. And I don't know how well A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts are getting along or not getting along right now, but certainly they can get along when A.J. Brown starts to get targets sent his way and they start to turn into touchdowns. But again, I'm sitting here counterpointing myself. The Steelers secondary, I think, has been much better than a lot of people around the country have given them credit for this year. So this really feels like a lot of strengths versus strengths this weekend, Jim.
It's funny. Somebody wrote an article that, and I don't know. I tend to believe it, that whatever the Steelers want to do, whatever they need to do on defense, they can do it. If they need to shut down the run, they can. And they've played so many teams that pass the ball. I mean, it's today's NFL. The last 5 games against below average competition, 415 winning percentage, they've given up 4.3 a carry. And that's, the Eagles have given up 4.2. So both of those teams can be run on. But I wonder if they focus on Saquon Barkley. If, Jalen Hurts has never really impressed me as a passer, but A.J. Brown's a really good receiver. Now, he's the kind of guy Joey can cover, I think. I don't know. Is A.J. Brown that fast that he has to
tell? He's more physical.
Big. Yeah, that's gonna be a fist fight out there on the edge.
Yeah.
Those two going against each other.
Hopefully you get an official that lets that go a little bit, because A.J. Brown's going to be hitting him back. T. Higgins, Tomlin called him a goon and said it was physical and it had to be physical. I think T. Higgins is faster than A.J. Brown.
He is.
So, you might be able to cover A.J. Brown and focus on the run game more, use a lot more of Landon Roberts. But I don't know how they're going to score. I don't know how the Steelers are going to score.
Jim, one guy who could help in a run game, and I was shocked when I looked at the stats today that he has 55 tackles, which I think they're the quietest 55 tackles I've ever seen, is Peyton Wilson, the rookie, who's just seems to be making plays that you don't even. I mean, the interception was huge, of course, several weeks ago. But do you think is Peyton Wilson starting to step into that spot? He has more tackles in the land than Roberts does this year.
Yeah, he's played more too. I mean, the two big plays he made, the one against the Ravens, that pick and on that wheel route and that touchdown, I think that vaulted him into the leadership for the team rookie of the year. I mean, we all love what Zach Frazier's doing, but I think Peyton Wilson makes one more play and he's got it. I don't know that it's been all that quiet though. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean he's flashed, right? Like JT mentioned the pick. He's capable, much like the rest of this defense, I think, and maybe this is the key to Sunday's game. They make plays right when you need them to. Right when you say, man, this defense can't bend anymore or else it's going to break, they make the play. And whether it's a quarterback helping them out, as Jameis helped them a couple times last Sunday, or it's them stepping up and making the plays, a Herbig strip sack, a big stop by Cam, early in the game last week against Cleveland, they need something to sort of stem the early Browns momentum from that first touchdown drive because it looked like Jerry Jeudy might eat him up all day. And what happens? Keanu Benton comes up with a big play. Not every young defensive lineman, when the ball ends up in the air, is aware of the fact that the ball's even in the air, much less looks up and finds it in his hands. So I think they continue to show that awareness, ball awareness, making the plays that they have to make when they have to make them, Jim.
The beauty of that Benton play is it? I mean, most defensive linemen, their picks are the quarterback makes a really bad throw right to them, and it surprises them, and they hold on to it. Benton red screen, moved to cover the guy, reached up and plucked it out of the air. It was great. It was a great play. It was great ball awareness, like you said. The other thing is Minka hasn't made a play yet. I mean, that's what did Bob Prince used to say? How did he say?
Hidden vigorish.
Hidden vigorish. Yeah. Hidden vigorish. Minka.
It's definitely true. I mean, that's the guy that we brought in to make the big plays, and he really hasn't. But I saw something on social media that made me laugh about the Steelers and Chiefs when they play. It's like the people around the league call it like the Black Voodoo game, like the team that both teams seem to always find a way to win. What game are you in these next 4 games that we have? What's the game that you're looking forward to the most? Which game you think's gonna really show where we're at as a team?
I don't know. I like this one coming up because the Steelers can't win in Philly. Yeah, I remember. Chuck Noll came out in his second year. He was talking about the schedule. Somebody said, you can't win in Philly, and Chuck Noll said something like, "I hope all 14 games we play are in Franklin Park. That has nothing to do with anything." And of course, he never won there. His '79 team couldn't win there. The 2008 team couldn't win there. A couple semifinalists couldn't win there. But Russell Wilson can't lose there. He won a playoff game there. I believe it. I believe it's 4 regular season games and 1 playoff game. And the smirk he had at the press conference up on the when he was up on the platform, he said something like, "I know about going to Philly." And the look in his eye said, "I got to look this guy's numbers up." Sure enough, never lost there. So I think he had heard that Steelers can't win in Philly and he can't lose. So, and they have so much pluck. And like you were saying, Chris, how they seem to make a play. Their special teams are great. And their defense is good enough and they have pluck. And the offense has Russ. And also, they have a chip on their shoulder being without Pickens. And the way Mike Williams played the other day, he could be Pickens, and Mike Williams has been so flatline, so cool with the media. I'm so used to these guys coming from out of town that won't talk to the media because they're trying to show their new teammates that they're cool to the media and they're not getting into it. Mike Williams has had no problem, and he's had no problem not playing. He's had no problems not being targeted. He's just been cool about it. And then when he gets thrown the ball, he makes a great play. So I'm looking for, he could be the guy. And Minka, of course.
Yeah. Somebody will come up with a big play if they're going to beat the Eagles on the road. You're absolutely right. Maybe like you said, it's Russ. You mentioned the history. This team hasn't won in Philly since the 1960s. If one guy knows Steelers history, it's a guy who's got a bunch of books on his website, JimWexell.com, the Steel City Insider. We mention it all the time. It is the perfect time of year to hook up a friend or a family member with On the Clock, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the NFL Draft, maybe Steeler Nation, maybe Polamalu, the Troy. Hold on. I got it right here, Jim. I like to hold it up for the camera for everybody watching on YouTube. The Troy Polamalu biography, a fantastic job you did on that. All that stuff available at JimWexell.com. We appreciate it, man. We'll catch up again soon. Happy holidays, all right?
Hey, you too, Chris. I really appreciate that. JT, take care, man.
Jim.
All right.